Okay, it appears to be 7 o'clock, and so I am excited to call to order the meeting of the Lafayette City Council on this October 11th, a Tuesday. And by visual review, I will assert that all members of the council and the vice mayor are in attendance. We will now go to agenda item number 3. And do I have a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
Okay, and council members. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri and a second by Council Member Dawson. I will conduct the roll call vote. Council Member Candell.
Aye.
Council Member Dawson.
Aye.
Council Member Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anduri. And I'm also an aye, and so we have unanimously adopted our agenda. So we will now move to agenda item number 4. And this is an opportunity for members of the public to offer comments to the council on items that are not on the agenda. You will have opportunity at each of the agenda items to offer comments. And so I will turn it over to Suzanne Erla, our communications analyst, to conduct that part of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor. There are members of the public who would like to speak at this time. The first will be Mary O'Malley, followed by Anushka Wardy and Elliot Hudson. If anyone else would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now. Thank you.
Welcome, Ms. O'Malley. I think.
Excuse me, I'm up. Can you hear me now?
We can. Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome.
A couple of weeks ago, several members of our community experienced a very sad event with an injured deer on the side of Mount Diablo Boulevard. Had what it looked like broken legs, maybe a broken back. And the deer was there with what looked like maybe her mother for about 30 hours. And a number of us contacted Contra Costa Animal Services, which we know, of course, now doesn't service wildlife. Department of Fish and Wildlife was unable to respond to emergencies because of their staffing shortages. And the Lafayette police came out and they said they were unable to dispatch the animal by, putting it down humanely. And I know this issue came up when the contract was put forward from Animal Services. And I think it was even an issue back about a year ago when there have been other incidences like this. And I don't have any solutions right now, but I think that many of us are pretty horrified by seeing this right in our main drag of this progressive, affluent town, and that we have to really come together and try to find some type of solution, whether or not that's identifying large animal veterinarians that will assist, or somehow permitting the sheriff's department or local police to put these animals down when there's no other option. And so I think there might be others bringing this concern too. And I just wanted to bring it to you guys because honestly, I don't know who else to go to. And you're our city representatives, and this is happening in our town a lot more than I think we'd like to see. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for bringing that. And I know we have been receiving other comments. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
The next person to speak is Anushka Wardy, followed by Elliot Hudson, Lori, and Valerie. If anyone else would like to speak on this item, which are non-agenda items, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And if you're dialing in from a telephone, you can press *9.
Welcome, Anushka.
Hello, Mayor Geringer, long time no see.
I know.
And other members. I could not have said it any better than Mary O'Malley just did. It's been really upsetting to hear what happened and how many agencies literally showed up and walked away. I think that was the most disturbing part. that there are capable people like police officers and sheriffs that walk away from this suffering animal. And I don't know if the city could perhaps create an ordinance under special circumstances until Contra Costa County Animal Services and or Fish and Wildlife can get their act together. I also wonder if the city could perhaps find out how other cities are handling these situations where deer and other wildlife are in close contact with cars and people. We live closely together. So hope that the city will follow up with this and take this seriously, because it's very, very sad what happened, and no animals should suffer like that. So thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for coming to speak to us.
Of course.
The next person to speak is Elliot Hudson, followed by Lori.
Welcome, Mr. Hudson.
Good evening, Mayor Geringer and members of the City Council. 2 months ago, I appeared before you and asked for appointment of a task force to immediately draft objective architectural standards that were consistent with Lafayette's mission statement, calling for actively promoting Lafayette's semi-rural character. As far as I know, nothing has happened in that vein. And so let's take a look at what's happened in the ensuing 2 months. The city now has a proposal that was considered in a joint meeting of the Design Review and Planning Commissions on September 19th for massive development right in the middle of our downtown, generally in the area between Uncle Hughes and Town Center 3. 5- and 6-story buildings, tens of thousands of square feet. And what do we have now to guide that construction? What it looks like, what this massive building central to Lafayette is going to do to the look and feel of our town. We have nothing. We had nothing before. We still have nothing. At the joint meeting, the staff report bemoaned that project as horrible. They didn't use that term. It's a little impolitic for a staff report, but read the report. It's bland. It's not Lafayette. Has nothing to do with us. The design review commissioners bemoaned it. But you know what they said? We don't have any tools to stop it. They want the tools. They don't have them. So the question is whether this council, is whether this city is going to continue to sit on its hands while day by day we get these applications for development in the middle of our town that have nothing to do with Lafayette's supposed to be. I ask you again to please protect Lafayette. Please act consistently with the mission statement that you adopted at the request of the broad majority of Lafayette residents. Please appoint that task force now so that your design review commissioners, your staff, the people who want to protect this town have the tools to do it. They don't. And day by day, we will be diminished. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hudson.
The next person to speak is Lori, followed by Valerie and 4 other speakers.
Welcome, Lori.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak today. I'm also speaking about the wildlife. We live in a unique area where wildlife needs have arisen due to our encroachment on their habitat. This has resulted in animals being injured by cars or spiked fences. And just a little background in animal services. In May 2018, Animal Services eliminated 5 field officer positions, which are the ones that attend to wildlife calls, stating to the Board of Supervisors that there would be no impact on services. However, in 2020, Animal Services eliminated all injured wildlife calls and transportation to Lindsay Wildlife, stating it was due to a lack of budget. However, Animal Services was under budget every year. Currently, Animal Services reduced the field officers to 12. And it's my understanding currently there are only 9 working officers doing mandatory overtime due to leave of absences. This is covering 1.1 million people. Animal Services tells citizens to call California Fish and Wildlife, stating they have jurisdiction over wildlife. And that's incorrect to tell the citizens that it's the responsibility of California Fish and Wildlife to attend to injured wildlife, knowing full well that they cannot due to staffing issues. Injured wildlife does not fall solely under their jurisdiction. Their website directs callers to their local animal shelter. Many rescues and other county animal services assist injured wildlife, like Antioch, Santa Cruz County. I can go on. If you go on Nextdoor or Facebook, you will see time and time again, the same thing is happening. The public doesn't know who to call when finding injured wildlife. Then calls every agency, then finds out there's no agency coming to help. It's inhumane to allow wildlife to suffer for hours or days without being euthanized. Citizens often try to attend to injured wildlife and transport them to Lindsay Wildlife Hospital because there's no resources. This year, Animal Services increased their fees to all the cities. However, they did not reinstate live wildlife calls. All across the US, big and small cities are attending to injured wildlife. How does our beautiful city and others in the county not? Many times it's people that are injuring these animals. How could we leave them to suffer for hours?
You still have time. That was
Thank
the
you.
30-second one.
What happened last week is just one of hundreds of stories. I've personally been in 5 incidents that will honestly stay with me forever. Animal Services needs to attend to these calls, or the Sheriff's Department or another agency. We are honestly traumatized by this. You can't expect us to just walk away and allow these animals to suffer. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for coming. Vice President Dury, you have a question?
Well, I'd like to ask the speaker if you have a text, if you could send that in writing. I'd like to see particularly the statistics, the information at the beginning of your presentation in writing. That would be helpful to me.
Sure, of course.
Thank you very much. And if you could send it to City Hall, then City Clerk Robbins can get it to all of us.
Thank you. That's what I was going to say.
Thank you.
So City Hall, so Joanne, right now my brain is not working. So it's City Hall at lovelafayette.org or?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. So my brain is working somewhat. Okay, thank you. And yes, if you could send it there, then it will go to all of us.
Okay, thank
Lori.
you. Thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
And good to see you. Thanks for coming.
Oh, I came out. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Our next speaker.
The next speaker is Valerie, followed by Lauren and 2 other speakers. If anyone else would like to speak at this time, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. And if you're calling from a telephone, press *9.
Okay, welcome, Valerie. You're still on mute if you've made it
There
over.
we go.
There you
Hi,
go.
I'm sorry. I'm not very
No,
used
no.
to Zoom.
No.
Thank you for having me on to speak. And I appreciate the other speakers. And I'm actually also calling about the wildlife issue. And I don't want to reiterate too much what was already said, because it was very well spoken. I did want to just sort of run over a couple of things about that. The fact that most people, I think, are not really aware of how bad the situation is, because when they do call, for example, the recent incident, agencies that would not or were not able to come out to help included the county animal services, Fish and Wildlife, the Sheriff Department, Lafayette Police, and any wildlife rehab organization that, and several were called, including the Lindsay and Veterinary Emergency Group, or VEG. And when called, often an agency tells the caller to call another agency, making the search for help fruitlessly circular and frustratingly. This has been happening on a regular basis for a while now, as the previous speaker talked about the reasons. Nearby residents of the latest incident said they can't walk their dogs without encountering dead animals in various stages of decomposition. One resident said her young son went to school that morning in tears over this. And that really struck me that do we want to subject children in our town to this? What does that say to them? It's worth thinking about. In terms of public safety, aside from the possibility of an injured animal staggering into the road, and injured deer can live for a surprisingly long time, this sure seems like it can attract coyotes and possibly mountain lions into the neighborhoods. As you've heard, animal control in other counties will come out 24/7 and humanely euthanize critically injured wild animals. In Lafayette, they won't even shoot a mortally wounded deer to put it out of its misery. Lafayette is a pretty prosperous town with a lot of civic pride. It seems the latest contract with Contra Costa Animal Services runs counter to that. And one idea is, could the 18 cities possibly band together and either insist animal services return to providing wildlife services, or perhaps the cities find another solution together? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
The next speaker is Lauren Lober, followed by caller with a number ending in 49.
Welcome.
Hi, good evening. This is Lorraine Lober. I'm with the Animal Rights Coalition, and I'm also would like to talk to you about the issue we're having with the injured and sick wildlife. We've did a campaign within Defense of Animals trying to improve our animal services. The contract with the 18 cities was one of the main topics. And as we know, the contracts were signed. I feel there wasn't time really for the cities to really do much of negotiations. So I think part of the big issue here is, it is true, there are only 9 field officers now that are struggling to do just the job that they have at hand. I know our services are lacking. Where I live, I'm in the West County area. I hear from a lot of citizens all over, people in rescue, all over next door about especially these injured wildlife. I think the problem really isn't that they can't do these services, the CCS, they can do these services. They want the cities to pay more money for them. So I know next year your per capita rate's going up to $9.11. So it's estimated you're probably going to be spending about $234,000. And my question is, what are you getting for those services? I know Richmond over here is very dissatisfied. The council member Nat Bates is actually running for mayor this year, and he's looking at doing a JPA with the other West County cities. So this is something I think that is definitely worth looking into. And the real concern too was that animal services said that deceased animal pickup was a priority to the cities, but yet injured wildlife isn't. I don't believe that. I think maybe the cities might not hear about it because people that they're like Good Samaritans actually have been helping injured wildlife. Not everybody can do that. And it is definitely, it's traumatizing for adults and as children. I know personally, I've called in before when we had good services, and they responded quickly and they did the transportation services. So other counties that are responding to these injured wildlife is also Sacramento, Marin, and then we have the rehab places like Lindsay Wildlife, and they don't do the transportation services. So what do we do? And I really want to thank Lafayette. I feel that you're very receptive, that you really do care. And I'm hoping that you can help explore this issue, look into a JPA, look at getting a committee going. There's a lot of people here that will be willing to help and give you the information. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you very much for coming and sharing this.
The next person is a caller from a phone number ending in 49, followed by Marilyn and Abby.
Hi, my name is Lisa Kirk, and I do cat rescue in Contra Costa County. I sent a public comment tonight regarding an email I sent to the Public Protection Commission of Contra Costa County in 2020 regarding a raccoon that no one would pick up in the city of Bay Point that laid there for 6 days until I could find someone that was actually vaccinated against rabies in order to put it in a trap and transport it. I deal with wildlife on a regular basis because I trap cats, but I know that raccoons can have rabies, and the raccoon we were dealing with had symptoms of rabies and distemper. So not only are we talking about injured, we're talking about sick and the threat to the public regarding rabies. In 2020, the city of Lafayette received a letter that from Animal Services that they would no longer pick up sick and injured wildlife. I think at this point, you need to renegotiate your contract with Contra Costa Animal Services. This should be brought up in your city management association meetings and your mayor's conferences. This is not only is this inhumane, it's a public threat of disease to your citizens. And Contra Costa County had picked up animals before. So I would ask that maybe your city manager bring this up at the next city manager association or mayor conference, and that you look at renegotiating your contract with Animal Services. If 11 cents more per capita would get sick and injured wildlife picked up in Contra Costa County, I think you have a responsibility to the public to do this. And the JPA would give your cities, plus the nonprofits and Animal Services, all a chance to come to the same table and discuss these issues. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next person to speak is Marilyn. And if anyone else would like to speak at this time, please use the raise hand feature or *9.
Welcome, Marilyn. And if you're over from the attendee room, you are still on mute. So we look forward to hearing from you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing us members of the community, although not Lafayette anymore, to speak. And hello, Teresa. It's been a long time. I am calling about the same subject that many people are calling about, the wildlife problem with Contra Costa Animal Services. I raised my children in Lafayette. I am next door down the road from where I used to live now, actually in Martinez. I do and have done cat rescue since 1988, which involves, of course, seeing a lot of the wildlife problems. And I sincerely hope not to repeat everything that everyone said, which brought up a lot of good points, but I am really, really hoping that Lafayette, as a wonderful community as you are, can try to do something to figure out this problem, because as many times if I over the years have found raccoons, deer, countless animals in emergency situations, and had my children involved, and it's done a good outcome because of Animal Services, sometimes Lindsay, This is a horrible situation now with hearing about what has just happened and many other problems that continually happen in the past several years. I'm not used to this. I'm used to having help from CCAS, from the Sheriff's Department, and now it's become a real problem. And to have neighbors, all of us involved in this, particularly children, seeing these things happen, I just want to reiterate, I hope that some of the cities, particularly your city, because you are also wonderful and progressive, can at least start something with this. And I will be talking to Martinez as well. And I hope we can all get together and figure out a solution to this problem. And I sincerely thank you for allowing us to speak.
Thank you. Thank you for coming. And I'm not going to speculate with Marilyn, but I think I know. So thank you for coming this evening. Suzanne, are there any additional speakers?
There are no other hands raised at this time.
So I do want to, again, thank all of the speakers who came to speak on this. And I know that many of us, I believe that the whole council has heard, different input from different residents. And the mayor's conference did hear this and decided that they were looking at, and I believe the managers association has as well, but the mayor's conference was looking at, since the contract was just entered into, looking at the statistics. The increase, my understanding, is not, as we were told at the mayor's conference, not automatic. And also there's an opportunity to review what type of services were actually received. I have also reached out to Supervisor Anderson's office to see what kind of other resources that we might have. And so waiting to hear back from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, because just to find out about staffing. So I know that we're supposed to take information. We can't act on the information this evening, but I do want you to know that we definitely, as a council, have heard you and are, I personally, I can't speak for everyone, am concerned and appreciate you coming and bringing those options. And again, any of the statistics, I know that you have written letters to us. I encourage you to continue doing that. And if there are no other speakers, and I made it through without, Mala giving me the eye, our city attorney. So if there are no other speakers, we will go on to our next agenda item, which will be presentations, agenda item 5. And we do have presentations as Tracy is turning on her her video, and Suzanne is bringing our 2 new hires, employees, people over. I do want to acknowledge that our city manager is not with us this evening, and Tracy Robinson is our interim acting city manager. And so Tracy, thank you for that and welcome. Take it away.
Thank you, Mayor Geringer, members of the council. I am very pleased to introduce to you tonight our 2 newest employees in the planning department in the positions of planning technician. So first we have Anna Toll, waving. There's Anna. So Anna began her career working in hospitality and nonprofits before pivoting to planning. Some of her previous work in these fields focused on transportation alternatives, food justice, and workforce development. She's originally from Wisconsin, and she is now happy to call Northern California her home. In her free time, she enjoys cooking, horseback riding, reading, and hiking with her dogs. So welcome.
Great, welcome.
Next up, we have Eric Laramora. Wait, there's Eric. Eric is originally from San Francisco, and he now calls Bay Point home. He graduated from planning school in Southern California, and he's very excited to delve into the planning world, where his main objective is to help residents maintain and create a community they can be proud of. During his free time, Eric enjoys gardening, hiking, playing video games, and caring for his many pets, which he did not specify what kind. So we're very excited to have them on board. Lots of work going on in planning, and so thank you.
So without, we will do the big applause, and without, just sort of scaring you about how excited we are to have you here. As Tracy just pointed out, we've been very looking for you to join our team, and are very excited that the planning department will have 2 new enthusiastic members of their team. And if you'd like to say a few words, maybe even sharing, about all of your pets, Eric or Anna, just welcome. So Anna, if you want to kick off.
Yes, thank you so much. Tracy gave a great introduction, so thank you for that. Also, thank you all of you for having us here tonight, allowing us to introduce ourselves. I personally am really excited to join the team. I want to, thank the planning department for bringing me on, and then, I've learned so much so far, so I'm really grateful for that, and just excited to continue on that journey. So thanks for having me here tonight.
Great, thank you.
Welcome aboard.
And Eric.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be joining the planning team. So far, it's been a really great experience. Everybody there has been so helpful, and same, I've been learning a lot and excited to learn more and to spend more time in Lafayette. It's definitely been great. And I have 3 dogs and many tropical fish.
No, okay, thank you. Not to be so nosy, but anyway, so on behalf of the council, welcome again. And if when I see you in the office, or maybe any of us see you in the office, if we don't immediately recognize you without the Zoom box over you, please introduce yourself. Thank you and welcome.
Yeah.
Yay. So with that, we will move on to agenda item 6, which is our consent calendar. And do any members of the council want to remove an item to discuss later? I'm seeing basically shaking of heads no. Are there any members of the public who would like to speak on one of the 3 items on the consent calendar? Raise your hand, and Suzanne, I see someone with their hand up.
Yes, Mayor. So the first person to speak at this time is Alan Yu. If anyone else would like to speak at this time, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom.
Okay, welcome.
Okay, I'm not sure if I got this on correctly.
We can hear you, so
okay.
Welcome.
And I just want to make sure this is regarding the housing element EIR matter.
It is not. This is our consent calendar, and in fairness, last time it was there and we pulled it off. This time it is not here. It is coming up in just a moment under 7C. So we'll bring you back and invite you at that time.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor.
No, thank you. And so the items that are on the consent calendar, just minutes that were from September 26th, and then the resolution allowing for video and teleconference meetings during the COVID. And I think I see that everyone has lowered their hand now. So
that is correct.
And there's the final acceptance of a construction contract. So are there any members of the public who want to speak to this? Going once. May I have a motion?
Move adoption of the consent calendar.
And a second, Councilmember Candell. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri and a second by Councilmember Candell. I will conduct a roll call vote. So Councilmember Candell.
Aye.
Councilmember Dawson.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anduri.
Aye.
And I'm also an aye. So we have unanimously, accepted or approved the consent calendar. So now we will move on to old business. And our first item under old business is 7A. And as we will recall, this was one of the items pulled and continued from our meeting that went longer. And so Councilmember Kwok, you were the council member who pulled that. Do you want to comment on it? And then
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I'm pulling it because there was just an error or a typo in page 18. There's the second line down when it's referenced to CEQA guideline 1.126.2a. It should be 15126.2a. So it should be, instead of 1.1, it should be 151 as a correction to the reference. And that's all.
Okay. Vice Mayor Anduri.
And since I have the opportunity, I have a second correction. I consistently referred to fair and peers throughout the evening as fair and polling, promoting Ellen. And so we can make that, change polling to peers wherever it appears.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so are there any members of the public who would like to speak to 7A, our minutes from September 12th? Not seeing any hands raised. Do I have a motion to approve item 7A?
So moved.
And Councilmember Kwok.
Second.
Second. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri and a second by Councilmember Kwok. We'll conduct the roll call vote. Councilmember Candell.
Aye.
Councilmember Dawson.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anduri.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And so we have unanimously adopted those minutes. We'll now move on to agenda item B, which is consideration of the resolution 2022-61 declaring Lafayette an idle-free city. And I understand that Nancy Tran is going to present the item. And I see that one of the members, Rainey, from good evening, Rainey. And then I see David. So if we're bringing over the members of the Project Earth team from Stanley Middle School now. Good evening, Lauren. Welcome. And welcome, David. Nancy, did Nancy Tran, was she going to do an introduction, or we will just go into the, here we go, here's Nancy.
Evening. Actually, I will not be presenting, but I would like to introduce Environmental Task Force member Eric Bonstein, who, along with the city manager, presented the no idling resolution to ETF last month. ETF voted to forward the recommendation of approval to adopt the resolution. So I'll hand it off to Eric.
And Suzanne, if we could bring Eric over. Thank you. And while he's coming over, I will say I'm glad that we're getting to this at a good, reasonable time for our presenters from Project Earth as well. There we go. Welcome, Eric. You're on mute. There we go. We can hear you now.
Okay, great.
And we can see you now.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'm Eric Fonstein, member of the city's Environmental Task Force, And also here tonight is ETF Chair Nancy Hu. And this project began in April of 2021 when this group of 5th grade students known as Project Earth then were from Burton Valley Elementary School made a presentation to the task force on the detrimental impacts of idling vehicles. Then recently on September 12th of 2022, the Project Earth team leaders here, Rainey, Lauren, and David, now in Stanley Middle School, made a presentation before the Lafayette City Council that the city adopt a resolution declaring Lafayette an idle-free city. The council then referred the item to the ETF for its review and recommendation. At the following ETF meeting on September 29th, the city manager presented the draft resolution, which the students researched and wrote based on similar past resolutions in other cities, such as the city of Dublin. The group also vetted the resolution with the police department, which made the recommendation highlighted in the staff report that the city commits to not idling municipal vehicles with the exception of cars used by patrol officers on duty. The ETF also made the slight modification to one of the whereases to state the ambient temperature situations to allow cars to remain idling. With these changes, the ETF unanimously endorsed the draft resolution for the City Council's consideration. Car emissions are most harmful to people with respiratory ailments and for children whose lungs are still developing, and other vulnerable segments of our community, such as the elderly, pregnant women, and those compromised with compromised immune systems. This resolution will help protect public health and reduce local emissions of greenhouse gases. So the ETF would like to thank the Project Earth team leaders, Rainey, Lauren, and David, again, for their background research and preparation of this policy recommendation.
Thank you. And before I go to any questions from council members, and welcome Nancy Hu, I wanted to give the Project Earth team any opportunity to make any comment, not putting you on the spot, but to make any comments that you might like to make as part of the staff report.
I just want to say thank you so much for the consideration. We don't really have anything to say, just that we've worked on this for a while, so it's great that the City Council is considering this.
Great, thank you, Rainey. Lauren or David, or did Rainey speak on your behalf?
She said basically all of it for us.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Are there any questions for staff from council members? Vice Mayor Andori?
Well, I'll put this in the form of a question, but I raised this with the city manager and she responded that the change was acceptable to her. So I guess I should ask it of the representatives of the Environmental Task Force. But in item number 2, under now therefore be it resolved, unless this has been changed by the city manager on the website, the version that I got in my package says encourages vehicles to turn off their engines immediately at schools and so forth. A very pedantic suggested change here, since vehicles can't turn off their engines. Can we change that to encourages drivers to turn off their vehicle engines immediately at schools?
I believe I see smiles and nodding. Is staff and are the Project Earth team members okay with that? Okay, thank you. And thumbs up. So are there any other questions or comments? Mostly questions. We'll stick to our process. Okay, well, without any from staff, I want to go to offer members of the public an opportunity to speak to this item before we bring it back to council for discussion and action.
If any members of the public would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now. Mayor, I do not see any hands raised.
Okay, thank you. So we will bring this back. I again want to thank the Project Earth team for their perseverance. I will follow our procedure and ask if there are any comments from council members before I call for a motion. And I see shaking of heads. So with that, do I have a motion to adopt Resolution 2022-61?
As amended.
Okay, so Vice Mayor Anduri, as amended, thank you, and Councilmember Dawson. And I don't know if all of you on Project Earth could see, but basically every council member raised their hand to second or make a motion. So we do have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri, a second by Councilmember Dawson. I will conduct the roll call vote. Councilmember Kendall.
An enthusiastic aye.
Councilmember Dawson.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anduri.
Aye.
And I too am enthusiastically saying aye and supporting this resolution. And so a resolution 2022-61 as amended has been approved, and lots of, again, gratitude and thanks, and look at those sighs of relief. And you kept with, you persevered and you kept going, and it's 2018 or 2019 when you first started this, and we're very happy that we moved this forward, and we know that you have other things on your list. And so we look forward to continuing, to work with you as we go forward on behalf of our environment and safety throughout our community for pedestrians and cyclists. So with that, at 7:46, kudos and thank you for being here and bringing this.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. And we appreciate you. It was a lot of hard work. So thank you. And as we're bringing them back into the green room, we will go on to also still under old business 7C. We will, excuse me, and thank you to staff for working with and the environmental task force. Sorry, it's, like when you have, anyway, the adults in the room, I didn't want to ignore you either. So thank you for all of that work. 7C, and I believe that we have Greg Wolf coming in to bring up to present on this item and the updated recommendation. Welcome, Greg and team.
Thank you, Mayor Geringer, members of the City Council. Good evening. The City Council has considered this matter at 2 public hearings on August 8th and September 12th. The continuation of the discussion was scheduled for last Tuesday, October 4th. However, that meeting was canceled and the matter was thus taken up again this evening. Yesterday, California Attorney General issued a document titled Best Practices for Analyzing and Mitigating Wildfire Impacts of Development Projects under the California Environmental Quality Act. It provides guidance with best practices and mitigation measures for local governments considering approval of development projects in fire-prone areas. The press release and guidance document were attached to a staff report supplement that was uploaded to the city's website earlier today. Staff is in the process of reviewing this new information and how it can inform the environmental impact analysis prepared for the city's 6th cycle housing element. We'll continue with that and reviewing the guidance and bring it back to the council recommendations on how this new information can best be incorporated into the housing element EIR. And thus, we are now recommending continuance of the matter at tonight's meeting to a future date to be determined. Certainly, new public notice will be provided when the matter is again scheduled for council consideration. We did receive a recent comment letter from Mr. Richard Drury that included a 2020 letter from Rick Ramasier. He was formerly with County Connection, and this 2020 letter does not discuss the housing element EIR or its analysis. While Mr. Ramasier stepped down from County Connection in December of 2021, County Connection's current general manager, Bill Churchill, testified to the City Council on September 12th, confirming County Connection's role in supporting the Contra Costa County Office of Emergency Services in the event that Lafayette's evacuation plan is executed. Mr. Ramesier's letter stated, how we can respond is totally dependent on the various factors that exist in the moment of a particular emergency. These factors could include, but are not limited to, traffic, the exact nature of the emergency, the distance of the evacuation from our resources, and how quickly we can get employees organized to respond who might not be at work at the moment. To further elaborate, there are no prefixed number of buses or vehicles pre-assigned to different kinds of emergencies. And that is, Mr. Ramesier's letter does not state that the County Connection cannot be relied on in the event of an evacuation. Rather, it seeks to manage expectations around how the agency is able to respond. Mr. Churchill, the current general manager, similarly spoke to this issue on the 12th and noted that if resources are stretched, reciprocal mutual aid agreements are in place with other transit providers in the area, which can be called upon, not unlike police and fire. So with that, we are again recommending continuance based on the new information from the State Attorney General's office yesterday, and we're happy to entertain any questions that you have right now.
Okay, thank you. So reminding sort of all of us and members of the public that our process is that now at this point, staff has given their staff report. If there are any council members and vice mayors who have questions of staff, we will do those now. We will then open it for the public hearing. And again, the recommendation from staff has changed to, excuse me, just making sure, continuance of the matter, tonight's meeting to a future date to be determined. And so that will be the item that we would take action on. So are there any questions from council members for staff? Councilmember Kendall.
Kind of a process question. Just reading the Attorney General Bonta's letter is the new guidelines. One of the suggestions that they made was to come up with a community acceptable, solutions for evacuation. So tonight, even though we are continuing this, can we ask for a community task force? Can we ask staff to include that into possibilities in their next staff report? Or is that not something we can, or do we just have to continue without any recommendations tonight?
I will defer to, I believe, Mala on that question.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Councilmember Kendall, you could give us some suggestions or parameters for us to consider. We are still doing a deeper dive into the document, but if there are things you would like us to pay particular attention to, this would be an appropriate time.
Thank you.
You can also, I should say, you can also do that at the subsequent meeting that we come back to, whatever you're.
Okay. And so we can do it at the subsequent meeting at this particular portion. And thank you, Councilmember Kendall. That was a question of staff on process. So I would, after we get public comment, we'll do weigh in on any things that we would like staff to any guidance to staff. So we won't start providing that guidance at this time. So Vice Mayor Andor, you had a question?
Yeah, I have a clarifying question for staff. Is the recommendation to defer it to the future date to be determined, number one, in order to, you don't know how much time it's going to take to analyze and come up with recommendations? And would it also be fair to say that your recommendation is that we not provide any advice to you until you've had a chance to fully analyze Attorney General Bonta's guidelines?
The
Go
first,
ahead.
the first part of your question is correct, Vice Mayor Nderi. We are looking to continue it. We will bring it back once we've had a chance to properly analyze it. So we don't have a specific date that we will be recommending tonight to you. And as Greg mentioned, we'll renotice it. To the extent that you did want to provide us with any guidance, since we haven't done our deep dive, we couldn't actually suggest to you, we couldn't give you any initial feedback. So you might give us guidance, which we may later, after doing our deeper dive, have some concerns or issues with. We wouldn't be able to give you that feedback now. We'd have to look at it and follow up with you. So, it is really a preference. We could do it as coming back and getting the guidance from you at a subsequent meeting. But if there are things you do want us to pay particular attention to, I'm also okay with receiving some of that tonight. But I do understand, given how late these guidelines just came out yesterday, there's a lot to take in. I understand that not everyone, whether it be the public or the council, including our team, has had a chance to really kind of analyze it. So you definitely can wait until the next meeting to give us feedback.
Okay. So any other questions from Councilmember Kwok or Dawson? Councilmember Dawson?
Just curious, obviously it came down recently and we are under a deadline to turn in our housing element. Has there been any discussion that anybody knows of any kind of allowance for additional time? I'm doubtful of it, but I'm just curious if there's been any kind of notification or any discussion of that's been heard.
I've not heard of any discussion, but we can certainly reach out to HCD and see if they would consider it.
Thank you.
And that's a very good question. I may have asked that earlier today while we were having the discussions about the about the timing and how this impacts. So if there are no additional questions of staff, we will now open this up to public comment. And so, Suzanne.
Thank you, Mayor. There are some hands raised. The first person to speak on this item is Patty Battersby, followed by Dawn. If anyone else would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now.
And welcome, Ms. Battersby.
Good evening. I was just going to say, since there was such late notice on this continuation, I would urge I know that there were several people that were going to speak tonight, and I would just urge anyone to wait until the following meeting. I think that's a more appropriate time. So that's all I need to say.
Thank you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
The next person to speak is Dawn.
Mm-hmm.
And if anyone else would like to speak, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now, as there are currently no other speakers for this item.
And I see the hand still up, but I don't see Dawn coming over. There we go.
That's okay.
Welcome.
Okay, sorry.
No, you're good. Welcome.
Good evening. I can't. I wanted to thank you for extending the discussion on the EIR and extending it again because of the new information. But I did want to say some items that if I'm not able to attend the meeting in the future, that I wanted to put them in there for future discussion by staff, etc. City staff indicated that they appropriately analyzed the additional information received and recommended approval. CEQA identifies or defines significant impact on the environment, but also states that the City Council in this case may also exercise in its own judgment determining an appropriate standard of significance, which it may do so on a project-specific basis. I would support the council directing staff to revise the methodology of assessing impact 4.17-1 on Lafayette. And my understanding is that 53% of Lafayette is in a very high fire hazard severity zone, that the impact should be considered very significant. The staff report says there are no established numerical standards or thresholds to determine if the amount of time required to evacuate an area is excessive. Then there needs to be some development of standards and or efforts to determine thresholds of time required to evacuate as being excessive or significant. The staff report says evacuation orders should be issued based on zones of closeness to a fire. Realistically, many more people will evacuate when threatened and cause chaos to the evacuation plan that may look fine on paper, but not in a life or death situation. Routes will be at a standstill. No mitigation can replace human lives lost or the impact of projects by replacing or providing substitute resources or environments when the damage is already done. The downtown specific plan, DSP, EIR, done in 2006 that I had submitted, that was part of the lettuce plan, I guess, study, did acknowledge that due to the large number of faults in the region, the possibility of a future rupture along an unknown fault is present. So the Alquist-Priolo Fault Zoning Act zones are updated periodically by the CGS as new information becomes available. And I was wondering if new information has become available and whether or not the staff has followed through on finding out about it. So since the housing element is not due until next year, I would urge the council not to approve the EIR without further consideration for the development of standards for time thresholds of evacuation, reviewing new fault zone information and the adverse impact to its citizens and the city. Thank you. Just made it.
Perfect timing. Thank you. Are there any questions for the speaker? And as I don't see any hands going up, and Dawn, thank you. I do want to say that we did receive your public comment in writing and appreciate you sharing it this evening. And thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry I didn't get the audio or the visual.
It's okay. Yeah, it's okay. We're glad you're here.
Thank you.
And then as others are raising their hands and coming over, the council has received the written public comment and this. I'm very honored to work with this council because I know that everyone reads their packets and all of the supporting documents that come with that. So thank you.
Mayor, the next person to speak is Libby Henry.
Welcome, Ms. Henry. Oh, you were unmuted and now you're muted. There you go.
Hi. Good evening, everyone. I'm so glad that the council has made this decision to table this. I would like to know, is it going to be a special meeting as it was previously planned to do last Tuesday, or is this just going to be for the next council meeting? And I just had one comment as to what Greg said about the county connection and its, willingness to respond in case of an emergency. However, something that he didn't mention or cover, and I know that other people have mentioned this in their letters, is about where they would be coming from, which obviously would increase the time of their being able to do any good. And I have to second what Dawn was saying, the loss of any human life should be the first priority in considering it, any of this, rather than seeing what you can mitigate, a few lives versus 100 lives in the case of a fire emergency. it's very sad to think that people would even think in those terms. At least in my mind, that's not acceptable. And the fact that the laws force us or required us to or require staff to think that way it's horrific as far as I'm concerned. We didn't designate this a high fire severity zone. The state did. And so the state is saying, okay, we need to be very careful. And then we have, but it doesn't affect the development out the BART station, so it's okay if it affects all the rest of us. I'm really failing to see where somebody can justify that. As long as the people that are living in these new developments are okay, then it doesn't matter that 100 or 200 people are going to burn up because they can't get out of Happy Valley Glen or Happy Valley Road. I'm sorry I get so emotional about this, but just the idea that guidelines have brought the staff to think in those terms rather than thinking about the safety and security of the people that live in Lafayette.
All right. Thank you for wrapping up, Libby. Are there any questions of the speaker? And I will answer the question that you asked. I don't see any additional hands raised, but will it be a special meeting or will it be at the next council meeting? As staff noted, they don't know exactly how much time it will take to analyze the latest information. And so we don't know. It will likely not be at the next meeting, I mean. And we will provide plenty of public notice before this item comes back.
Okay, so you're saying it will not be a special?
I don't know that we won't schedule a meeting separate, but right now we do not know when it's coming back. It will be at a future date and will be well noticed to the public.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, are there any other members of the public who would like to speak to this item?
Mayor, I do not see any other hands raised at this time.
Thank you, Suzanne. I do not either. So we will bring it back to the council, and I look forward to the discussion from my colleagues. But following up on Councilmember Candel's process question, and then Vice Mayor Andori's clarification and discussion, I personally am inclined to, if we have questions or comments, I think that's fine, but I'm personally inclined to have staff bring it back and have us do the discussion after there has been time to analyze and to have BBK, Mala, Sarah, others on that team review the information. But I'm again open to what my colleagues would like to do. So Councilmember Kendall.
Yes, so thank you. So in reading the guidance, there was one sentence that really stuck out. That was the one sentence where I went, oh, maybe focus on that sentence and what this really means. And the sentence is on the top of page 12 that says, quote, a conclusion that an increase in evacuation times is a less than significant impact should be based on a threshold of significance that reflects community-wide goals and standards. And it was that word community, right? The community-wide goals and standards. And let's, kind of think what that really means for us.
Okay. So staff has heard.
Thanks.
So Vice Mayor Andori.
Well, I'm generally speaking, I agree with what you said, Mayor, that I think any discussion would involve speculation. I will just share that same sentence that Councilmember Kendall mentioned is on my mark, underlined with question marks. I'm looking for some clarification on that.
Mine too. I haven't printed out the hard copy, but in my screen, I could, hold it up, but no, several highlights, but I'm sorry, Vice Mayor Nduri, go ahead.
No, that's it. I think anything I would say on this at this point is speculation, and that wouldn't be helpful. So I'm looking forward to analysis and recommendations from staff.
And before, Councilmember Dawson, if you'll just hold for 1 second. Suzanne, I do see that a member of the public has their hand up, and I didn't see when it came up from when we started talking. And so I want to give the benefit of the doubt that somebody might have had trouble raising their hand and invite, or did she lower her hand?
Mayor, that person did just lower their hand.
Okay. Thank you. Then we'll continue back. So Councilmember Dawson, thank you. I apologize for interrupting, but thank you.
No, thank you for the deference to our resident. I just wanted to basically agree with Councilmember Candell and Vice Mayor Andori that is an interesting point. And I know our staff is great at looking at this because it does definitely ask to take a look at prior evacuations and the success of those situations before. And also I would gather, which sounds kind of interesting, but other areas that may not be directly impacted by a wildfire in, like, let's say that area, but comparing the times of evacuation, because I'm curious how that process of what you will come up with in terms of how we can look at what is a acceptable threshold. So be very interested in seeing how we come up with that and look at that as we go forward. So thanks.
Okay. Councilmember Kwok, did you have?
I really have nothing to add except that I have a lot of question marks near the document. I will just say, for the benefit of the public or others who have not read it, is that this document, to me at least, is very germane to the conversation that we're having, because words like threshold of significance, evacuation times, impacts of neighborhoods. I mean, these are exactly the core issues where the council has been facing for several weeks and trying to come to a resolution on. And it's a very challenging space. And I think that's a reason why the Attorney General came out with best practices. And I don't think they're easy solutions. They're just tighter commentary, which causes us to have to do, gives us more framework to analyze this, or maybe charts a course for the work that we have to do. And my sense is that it's a significant amount of work that it's not like 5 days and we'll be done, I don't think. So I do think we should leave staff the time and deliberate the implications very thoughtfully, carefully, and so forth. So it's good timing in a way that it came out yesterday before our vote today. And so I do think, and I know that staff is going to have to work very, very hard on this in the days and weeks ahead. So anyways, I want to just pause there and say that that's where I think we're at, with lots of question marks, but I hope we can fill in the gaps in the weeks ahead.
Thank you. Vice Mayor Andori.
And following up on what Councilmember Kwok said, just zooming out 10,000 feet, this just exemplifies what we've been talking about at the council level in our priority setting and about how one part of the state is saying you shouldn't build, and the other part of the state is saying you've got to build. And so I'm looking forward to the staff's resolution of this conundrum at the next meeting.
Whenever that meeting shall be. So if there are no additional comments, questions, clarifications, then may I have a motion to recommend to continue the matter goodness gracious, may I have a motion to continue the matter to a future date to be determined?
So moved.
Vice Mayor Anduri has made the motion. Councilmember Kendall got her hand up. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri, a second by Councilmember Kendall. I will conduct the roll call vote. Councilmember Kendall.
Aye.
Councilmember Dawson.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anduri.
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And so we have continued this item to a future date. I want to thank staff, and I want in advance for the work that you will continue to do, and also the consultants who were here and legal team who were here this evening in case we had questions. So thank you again in advance for the work. Okay, so we will now move on to agenda item 8, which we have 2 items under our public hearing. Our first one will be led by Nancy Tran, coming forward for our water efficient landscaping. And I keep wanting to call it Muello, but I'm sure someone else has the correct way to pronounce that, but we'll just call it our water efficient landscaping ordinance. In the case of large, well, I'll do it still under my council meeting updates. Welcome back, Nancy.
Evening. I will be sharing a pre-recorded presentation prepared by the previous Assistant Planner Joshua Muller on the zoning text amendment. So let me just share.
And while you're doing that, Nancy, I want to acknowledge that you are coming in and where we've had a staff vacancy and taking over that work and continuing to move it forward. So thank you.
Share this again.
Looked like it wanted to come up. There you go.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Muller, and I will be doing an additional technical presentation concerning ZT05-22, which is a city-initiated amendment to the Lafayette Municipal Code to add a new chapter titled Water Efficient Landscaping in order to implement the state mandate requiring local jurisdictions to implement water-efficient landscape design and irrigation practices that are set forth in the California Code of Regulations, Title 23, Chapter 2-7. So some background for this zoning text amendment. In 2015, the state of California adopted Executive Order B-29-15, which tasked the Department of Water Resources to update the Model Water Efficiency Landscape Ordinance, or MWELO, which I will refer to later in the presentation, regulations to increase water efficiency standards for new and existing landscapes through more efficient irrigation systems, gray water usage, on-site stormwater capture, and by limiting the portions of landscapes that can be covered in turf. Additionally, in September of 2016, Governor Brown signed SB 1383, which addresses short-lived pollutants and, as a component, also requires jurisdictions to enact MWELO, or a comparable water efficiency landscape ordinance. So the main purpose of these ordinances is to increase water efficiency and improve environmental conditions within our built environments. And this can be accomplished by plant factors, irrigation, more water efficient layouts and plant choices, and the use of hydrozones and proper irrigation methods, and providing plants that are well adapted to the California landscape. And by completing the certain steps within MWILO, specifically the water efficiency worksheet, property owners will be able to know the estimated total water use of their proposed landscape, or their ETWU, and they can make sure that that number does not exceed the maximum applied water allowance, or MAWA, that is outlined within the MWILO language. And for projects, there are two main thresholds for MWILO, and that is new construction projects with an aggregate landscape area equal to or greater than 500 square feet. In this case, that is new construction for new buildings with landscape, or other new landscaping, such as a new park, a playground, or a green belt without any associated buildings, or a rehabilitated landscape project with an aggregate landscape area equal to or greater than 2,500 square feet. And this is defined as any re-landscaping project that requires a permit, plan check, or design review, and the modified landscape area in question is equal to or greater than 2,500 square feet. And in terms of MWILO review, if it does apply, there are two main pathways that are elaborated in the staff report. There is the prescriptive pathway, which applies to new construction or rehabilitation of existing landscape between 500 and 2,500 square feet of landscaped area, and the performance pathway, which concerns the new construction or rehabilitation of existing landscape over 2,500 square feet of landscaped area. And there are some nuanced differences between the two. The prescriptive pathway allows for more flexibility in terms of design and implementation. The main components of that pathway, as outlined further in the staff report and within Appendix D of the model ordinance, involve a project information form, which is common across all MWILO applicable projects. And then there are multiple standards that the application must meet, and those concern the use of compost material, plant material, as in certain plants to be used, not specific species, but just in general, certain planting types to be used, as well as turf and irrigation characteristics. On the other hand, the performance pathway is more elaborate and technical due to the larger impact of the over 2,500 square foot landscaped area. And that pathway consists of the same project information form, as well as multiple technical items outlining essentially an analysis of the existing condition and proposed landscape. And these include a water efficient landscape worksheet, which is where the ETWU and MAWA are calculated, a soil management report, a landscape design plan, an irrigation design plan, and a grading design plan. And concerning MWILO, some of these aspects are already required components of the city's application review process. Specifically with our discretionary applications, some of these components are required. In terms of further implementation, the city will develop additional forms for MWILO applicable projects. There's a draft of one of those forms in the appendix to the staff report, and also updating our existing submittal checklists and application forms to incorporate MWILO and to make sure that those requirements are well spelled out in those materials. in terms of the effective date of this ordinance shall be 30 days after the City Council adopts the accompanying ordinance, in this case, ordinance number 669. And this project is exempt from CEQA due to the general rule exemption concerning projects or non-projects. And the noticing for this hearing was published in a newspaper of general circulation with a display ad. And that, as well as the posting of the meeting agenda, serves as the notice to the general public for this hearing. And further discussion of the application and the recommendation will be provided by the project planner. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful evening.
Just wanted to add, staff received one public comment from the Parks, Trail and Recreation Commission Chair, Joe Doherty. He expressed concern on how the ordinance may affect the Lafayette Park system. Just for clarification, unless the proposed scope of work requires the parks to have some sort of review in terms of building, landscape permit, plan check, or design review, rehabilitation of landscaping would not be under the city's review. So staff recommends council take public testimony, introduce ordinance 669, and continue the item to October 24th for a second reading and adoption.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Nancy. And Joshua.
I'm sorry, I also wanted to add Penn Phillips, the city consultant, landscape consultant, is also available to answer any specific MWILO questions.
Hi, Penn. Thank you, Nancy, because I was going to ask if our guest also had anything to add. So, Penn.
No, I think it's great that Lafayette is coming on board with the rest of the state.
Great, thank you. Are there any questions from council members of staff before I open to public comment? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. So Suzanne, will you please conduct the public comment portion? So actually, I'm opening the public hearing and we'll welcome public comment. And Suzanne, thank you for helping to coordinate that.
You are welcome. If anyone would like to comment on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now. Mayor, I do not see any hands raised at this time.
Okay, thank you. So I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Are there any comments, any additional, well, not questions because there weren't any questions earlier, but are there any questions or comments now? Councilmember Kendall.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. This was a very interesting read. My only concern is the wildfire and the fire hardening aspects of this. Like there was a couple comments about mulch and you have to have 3 inches of mulch, but the Firewise and the fire department is saying, well, that can't be within 5 feet of your house, right? And so I think we need to put some thought into making sure that we're not requiring things that the fire department doesn't want us to do. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I mean, I think it makes sense. I'm looking at staff nodding. And so before it comes back, I guess Penn or Nancy, before it comes back, or do you have a comment on that now?
It might not be a bad idea just to review the regulations with the fire department and make sure everyone's on the same page. I think that's the point.
Yeah. Great.
Okay. Another issue with fire departments, they don't want to see any trees or hanging eaves or within 30 feet. Some ordinances are with buildings. And you know, it's a shame because our oaks and trees give such great cooling effects to the residents. We take those down, all of a sudden you're going to be paying a lot more for your air conditioning. So I think it's a give and take. And And hopefully the fire department will see that too.
Well, and we are, yeah, so and I appreciate that. And I appreciate Councilmember Kendall raising this. We are very focused, as many communities are, about Firewise and our defensible space, as we also heard, during the EIR presentation. So thank you for having the fire department look at that. And I see Councilmember Kwok. I saw Vice Mayor Anduri, I think, had his hand and then went down, but go ahead, Councilmember Kwok.
Oh, sure. I was going to ask Penn while he's here, and if you've had experience of implementation of MWILO in other cities, if you could just comment on how is the implementation going in those cities. What can we expect in our city? What are some of the pros and cons or things to watch out for?
I mentioned this with Greg the last time. Is some cities they embrace this and get a little too zealous over the whole idea, and they require these. It's very technical. Like, in order to at the preliminary during planning, say, and we've got designs. It's just preliminary designs. They require some cities. Berkeley's one of them that just adopted this, to have complete WILO compliance right at the very beginning. So what that means is doing a detailed planting plan and a detailed irrigation plan, and then all your water calculations for all the vegetation that you're proposing. While the site plan and the architecture is changing, and it's just like you're going to have to do it over again. And so when I'm writing fees to do that such for the city of Berkeley, I tell the developer, this is going to cost you because they're going to we're going to do this twice. So that's one caution that I would say. Require this towards the end. All they need in the beginning is a note saying, as plans progress, this planting plan will be WILO compliant. So, and that can be a condition of approval. Force that down the line during the building submittal. So that's the only issue that I've seen. There's other Martinez. They actually don't. They say we don't care if you do it or not, and we're like, well, it's actually state law, so I think we'll do it on our due diligence. But so it's really everyone's kind of getting on board. The Peninsula was really kind of the first ones to kind of lead the charge to adopt this. So if you wanted to talk to other municipalities that have adopted this and have been running with it for a while, that would be Menlo Park, Palo Alto, Hillsborough, and it seems like the Contra Costa County cities are adopting it a little bit later. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay.
Thank you very much. Yeah, all the ideas that help us run things more smoothly for our residents, we want to hear about them. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It'll likely take an irrigation consultant it's certainly another hoop for applicants to jump through, and probably not everyone happy about that, but I think it's a good hoop to be jumping through.
Okay, so other questions? Vice Mayor Anduri?
Nancy, I don't know if you know this. Were you I understand the Planning Commission is obviously this came from the Environmental Task Force, and then the Planning Commission is recommending. Was there any discussion at the Planning Commission about anything like the issues we've just discussed, or any other issues we should be aware of?
When I read the minutes, I did not see any concerns about the fire issue and any conflicts.
Okay. And in terms of adopting it, and I should have asked this earlier today, and maybe Greg knows the answer to this, but I believe we refer to MWILO in our SB 9 implementing ordinance. Or am I misremembering? I mean, we need to adopt this for that purpose.
It is in the SB 9 requirements.
Okay.
For objective standards, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, or does anyone, so as noted by staff, we will make a motion to continue this to the October 24th meeting for a second reading and ultimately adoption at that time. And so, Councilmember Dawson?
Sorry, if we're not, are we having a further discussion at this time then, or this is it until next reading is what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think that ideally if we have concerns about it now, we would bring those up now, and that way staff would be able to address those prior to coming back. So this would be a first reading, and any guidance, am I echoing? Anyway, a first reading and any guidance, and then next time when it comes back, we would be asked to adopt it.
Okay,
and if something came up in between now and then, obviously we could raise that again, but
just in follow-up then to what Penn even mentioned with what Berkeley went through, or developers went through with Berkeley, I could see where we might want to look at this in terms of our planning process, that it is part of our conditions towards the end, and kind of spelled out that way, where there's some nod to yes, we'll be compliant, but conditioned on in the final pass-through planning that it we'll have all the MWILO compliant papers in place and everything. Okay.
Correct. Greg, did you want to add anything?
Well, I just wanted to concur with Councilmember Dawson that slotting this in at the appropriate time and taking Penn's comments to heart, totally appropriate to do that, and not to have it too early in the process and incur yet additional cost to applicants. Further, the comments that I've heard with respect to Firewise and overhanging limbs, I'm not seeing any conflict between MWILO and its intentions and goals and Firewise. I think those can happily coexist. For instance, if you need a ground cover mulch within 5 feet of the residence, it can be a non-flammable gravel, that sort of thing. So it needn't be bark mulch, if you will, something that could be flammable. And the fire district is sensitive to Lafayette's, natural character. At the same time, they also are looking out for fire risk, and so bear that all in mind and balance it to the degree they can when issuing letters and reviews for residents to remove vegetation. So.
Okay. So any Councilmember Dawson?
I just say thanks to Greg for that.
Oh, thank you. So any other questions, comments? Do we have a motion to continue the item to October 24th for a second reading and adoption?
So moved.
And if I might add to that, it would be to introduce the ordinance as well, as I think that's what you were intending.
Oh, excuse me. Yes, thank you. And thank you for making sure that I do it properly. So we are a motion to introduce ordinance 669 and then continue. We have taken public comment. We did the public hearing and continue the item to October 24th, 2022 for a second reading and adoption. And Councilmember Kwok has made that motion, and Councilmember Dawson has seconded. So we have that motion. We'll conduct a roll call vote. Councilmember Kendall.
Aye.
Councilmember Dawson.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Andori.
Aye.
And I am an aye, so we have adopted that motion. So thank you to Nancy. Thank you to Penn Phillips. Thank you to Joshua in absentia for doing his presentation. And we will see you all again on October 24th. Thank you. And now we will move to our second public hearing. And Nancy is staying on the screen. So I'm thinking if it has to do with the environmental task force, that Nancy is queued up to lead that, and Nancy Hu. And Greg Wolf will stay in the room, it looks like. So where are we starting? Which Nancy?
I'll start.
Okay.
So Joshua Mueller also prepared another presentation.
Okay.
We recorded before he left. So I'll start with that, and then I'll continue the presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joshua Mueller, and I am doing an additional technical presentation regarding ZT07-22, which is a city-initiated zoning text amendment to Chapter 6-6 of the Lafayette Municipal Code entitled Off-Street Parking to revise the electric vehicle charging requirements for multifamily and commercial development projects. And in light of state action regarding electric vehicles, on March 17th, 2021, research into an ordinance to address electric vehicle charging infrastructure was identified as a goal by the Environmental Task Force for their 2021-22 fiscal year and endorsed by the City Council. And the Environmental Task Force created a subcommittee to conduct this research, specifically looking at other jurisdictions and technical information, and they developed a framework to draft an ordinance on. And this ordinance that you are reading tonight is based on the ETF's framework that was approved at a prior ETF meeting. And this draft ordinance will update the requirements as defined in Section 6-604, subsection E of the Municipal Code, and will also update the associated definitions in Section 6-603. And per the recommended framework, only the requirements for new multifamily developments will be updated. The new requirements are centered around two main variables: EV charging speed and EV charging readiness, and I will explain the intricacies of each of them. So first, we can discuss EV charging speed. There are three main levels, which are level 1, 2, and 3. So level 1 is your standard 120 volt outlet, which will give you approximately 40 miles of charge, essentially charging overnight. And then your level 2 will give you 240 volts, so similar to like washer or dryer, and that will give you 100 to 300 miles overnight. And then the level 3 charging, also known as DC fast charging, is 480 volts, and that can give you 100 miles and upwards in approximately 30 minutes. These are common in certain commercial settings like the Whole Foods at Lafayette and Tesla superchargers. And the key definitions for EV readiness are as shown. There is EV capable, which is the most basic setup where there is conduit running from the breaker box to the parking, but there is no wiring installed and there's no outlet installed either. And then EV ready charging is one step up, it has the conduit, and it also has the wiring installed as well as an outlet. And then EV charger installed, otherwise known as electric vehicle supply equipment, or EVSE, that is the full Monty, all of the components of capable and ready, so the conduit, the wire, the outlet, and then the charging equipment itself is mounted and you can plug it directly into your vehicle. So moving on to the recommendation for Lafayette based on the framework that the ETF developed. So the draft ordinance looks to go beyond the proposed 2022 Cal Green building code updated standards. So as you can see in the graphic, the Cal Green requirements have 10% level 2 EV capable and 25% low power level 2 EV ready, 10%, 25% respectively. And then specifically for 20 or more dwelling units, 5% of the spaces need to be level 2 EVSE or EV charger installed. And the Lafayette draft ordinance seeks to go further to provide greater charging across development, and it has the difference in the case of fewer than 20 dwelling units, 65% need to be EV ready level 1, and then for 20 or more, 60%, I apologize, 65% for less than 20, and then for more than 20, 60% must be EV level 1. So there's essentially at least one level 1 charger per dwelling unit. And since each residence has an outlet which could be shared with the guests, this ordinance doesn't require any guest parking to have EV chargers over what the state requires for 20 or more dwelling units. They specifically require at least one EVSE for common visitor parking. And an additional note is that the draft ordinance will also remove the existing table for commercial development, because any proposed changes that the ETF was looking at would have been essentially comparable to the commercial requirements in Cal Green, the upcoming update. So we are preemptively removing the commercial requirements and will adopt the new Cal Green commercial requirements when the new building code is adopted by reference. And on a related note, the effective date for this ordinance will be January 1st, 2023, which aligns with the Cal Green updated building code's effective date. And in terms of prior actions for this, as mentioned, the ETF developed the framework. This was presented to the Planning Commission, and they adopted Resolution 2022-13, finding the project exempt from CEQA and recommending that the City Council adopt Ordinance 683, which is what you will see tonight, at their August 22nd meeting. That is, the Planning Commission adopted this at their August 22nd, 2022 meeting. And notice for this City Council meeting was published in a newspaper of general circulation. There was a display ad published in accordance with state law, and that posting of the meeting agenda also serves notice to the general public. And if you have any further questions, as well as the recommendation, that will be presented to you by the project planner for this. And thank you very much and have a wonderful night.
Thank you. And Nancy, did you have anything to add?
Yes. So staff received 2 public comments earlier this afternoon in support of the proposed amendments. These were forwarded to council earlier and uploaded online. Staff recommends council take public testimony, introduce Ordinance 682, and continue the item to October 24th for a second reading and adoption. Myself, Environmental Task Force Nancy Hu, and ETF member Stephen Waddick are available to answer any questions.
Great, thank you. Council Member Dot, actually Chair Who, would you like to speak before we move?
Yes, just a correction. I guess it's Steve Caligeras. So Steve Caligeras was our former chair, and he was working extensively on this EV ordinance, actually with Council Member Weitai Kwok when Weitai was on our ETF. So he said that he is also available for questions. And
Yes, so Suzanne, why don't we bring Steve in? I see that he's over in the attending. Steve, if you could raise your hand so that she sees you. Thank you.
Thanks, Steve.
Great. So Councilmember Dawson, you had your hand up first for any questions before we go. Welcome, Steve. And Councilmember Dawson.
No, it was more of a comment that I'm very excited about this. So it's
so
been
let's hold comments until our comment time. So Vice Mayor Andori.
Just a very minor, again, pedantic point, but in the presentation, it referred to the Planning Commission recommending adoption of Ordinance 683, and we have in front of us Ordinance 682. Which one is one of them? It's the Planning Commission. Is that the wrong number in the presentation? And the Planning Commission had the right number? Does it matter? I'll defer to the city attorney on that.
The number doesn't matter as long as they were, I think it was probably a typo. It looks like in the packet is 682. So as long as they reviewed, which I'm sure they did, the ordinance that's before the council.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vice Mayor Andori. Councilmember Candell.
Yes, thank you. Great presentation. Again, Joshua. My only question was about lifts. We're exempting those projects with the car lifts. And I guess I understand it's just they're worried about, so there's no way to retrofit a lift to be able to support the cable safely.
Oh,
go ahead.
Sorry. Just from my experience working with other multi-development projects, multi-family development projects, it is possible to have EV charging within it, but not for both spaces.
So could we just make that, if it's got a lift, you have to at least have a plug in the wall, like that so there is a place to, because they're going to have power there anyway, the lift, right? And so it seems like having just a 120 electrical outlet available. Because right now it sounds like they're just completely exempted, and it just seems like that's not ideal.
Okay, so staff can look at that before it comes back, or is there a comment on that at this time?
I'm happy to comment during the comment section.
Okay, or response to the question, but we can do that during that time. Are there any additional questions of council before I open the public hearing? Or by council of staff? Okay, so we will now open the public hearing on this item. And Suzanne, thank you for coordinating that.
Thank you, Mayor. If any members of the public would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now. Mayor, there are no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. I will close the public hearing, and now we can have comments on this item. And if you did have another question, obviously we could ask those as well. So Councilmember Kwok, you
sure, that's an excellent question that Councilmember Candell asked about. What about lifts? Because increasing number of dwelling units may have lifts that lift the vehicles up one above the other. And I believe that the language, the reason the language is here to exempt parking facilities served by parking lifts is because that was the language that the state had, as they updated their 2023 direction, they had exempted the lifts. And I don't think we dive too deep into it, except to just look at that potentially if you've plugged your car in, but then somebody pushes the button and moves it, that you might pinch the, the cable could get caught. There could be danger involved in just having the wires move around or get pinched or even broken and get somebody electrocuted. So I think it was a safety reason that they were not ready to, have that go implemented. But we could look at it more. But I think just for simplicity reasons, the code is written to reflect the language of state language and not be in conflict with it.
Okay. Did anyone else have a comment on that before? And so Councilmember.
I do. Yeah. Sorry.
Oh, I was looking at staff because I thought Nancy, but anyway, go ahead, and the committee, but go ahead, Councilmember Kendall.
And so while I agree with that, then at least we could require just the outlet, right? And so it's not on us, rather than we're not saying that you can or can't, but at some point somebody will create a safe one. I mean, there's going to be a device created that'll make a safe one, and we don't want to, shoot ourselves in the foot on this one. But that's my thought.
Okay. So, okay. Councilmember Dawson.
I think just following up on that line of thought of Councilmember Kendall, it says areas of parking facilities served by the lift. So would that make then the balance of those areas maybe more intensive in terms of the EV compliance with our ordinance? I mean, could we look at it that way? where if the lift is exempt, then if there's other parking areas that are available, there'd be a comparable, maybe not a 1-for-1 because they're doing a lift, but somewhere where we can still ask for some level of compliance with this ordinance. Just
Yeah, I think in terms of the exception, when it does talk about the parking lifts, I don't think it's necessarily saying the entire parking facility that has any kind of parking lift is exempt. It's just saying the areas that are served by the parking lifts are exempt. So imagine if there are other parts of the parking facility that aren't that don't have the lift, that those areas would not be exempt.
Okay, it just changes your percentage. It is also, I don't know if there should be a, you know what I mean, like a, what do you call it? An equation of some sort for that, a calculation of some sort for that balance that's not served by the lift. Just a thought.
So go ahead, Steve, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so on the issue of the parking lift, I wanted to echo what Wei Tai said, which is, we are keeping the language in the state Calgreen standard for simplification purposes and also safety reasons, which I think is the genesis of it. I also agree with what Nancy was saying that, I don't think entire developments that have lifts are exempt. It's just the parking spaces that are accounted for by the lift are not sort of part of the denominator, so the standard's written, 10% of spaces need to be EV ready. So my understanding is that in calculating that 10%, you don't include the spaces that are on the lift. So, if a development has 20 spaces, half of them are on a lift and half of them are surface parking, then I think the ordinance would apply to those remaining 10 spaces, or the half of the 10 spaces that are surface parking. or at least that would be a reasonable interpretation for our planning department to, impose on applicants. And just one last point on that, which is, lifts are quite, they're big pieces of equipment. They're quite expensive. And so, like Councilmember Kendall was saying, they're powered already. So, but I think for sort of that same reason that, it's something that a situation that the market might be able to handle. I mean, this is speculation, but might be able to handle well, that if you're putting in a, very expensive piece of equipment like a multi-space parking lift, and there's a demand for EV charging, then, adding some outlets to that, or I don't think this ordinance disincentivizes that or gets in the way of that happening in the future.
Okay, Councilmember Dawson.
Thanks, Steve. Yeah, that seems like a logical understanding of, or interpretation of that. And I would gather we'd hold developers to that understanding too, and the Planning Commission would, I would hope as well. And I just want to say thank you for this long work in getting to this point, because I know when this has come up in our various development applications, it's been like pulling teeth to get people to put in the plugs, even with the lift. That was one of the applications that came by. So this is really great. Really appreciate all the hard work, and the reach on it is excellent, because it's our chance to really, get a good head start on this, and have the developers really buy into where we are going as well. So thank you very much for all of your work.
And I agree. And thank you to all members of the Environmental Task Force who have been working on this, including council members I know who have brought this forward, and particularly also to the Environmental Task Force and staff. So with that, Nancy, were you raising? Okay. So with that, we're now being asked to have a motion to introduce the ordinance 682 and continue the item to October 24th, 2022 meeting for second reading and adoption. Do I have a motion? Councilmember Dawson has moved the item. Councilmember Kendall is the second. So we have a motion and a second. So we'll conduct the roll call vote. Councilmember Kendall.
Aye.
Councilmember Dawson.
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Anduri.
Aye.
And I'm an enthusiastic aye, and really appreciate all the work. We have approved that to go to the next meeting. So I don't want you to think that I only enthusiastically vote for things when there are students here. So I know a lot of work went into this, so thank you. And it is a good thing for the community when we bring it back to vote on it. Okay, so with that, we will move to agenda item number 9, which is our council commission reports. And Vice Mayor Anduri has his hand up so fast that we barely could get the item opened. So Vice Mayor Anduri.
Okay, well, our ordinance for council meetings provides for meetings on the 2nd and 4th Monday of each month. And as a practice, we only meet one Monday in August, the 2nd Monday. But last year in 2021, at the request of a council member, we changed from the 2nd Monday to the 4th Monday. And I would like to do that also in 2023 for 2 reasons. One is, over time, we've had a shift in when school starts. I think originally it was the 1st August, so people would have a break between the first, second Monday, so people would have a break before school starts. But now school is starting so early that it sort of, it doesn't work. So what I'm suggest is, for that purpose, we move it to the 4th Tuesday when school is back in session. Then we have a break people are back for the council meeting. And then, of course, the ulterior reason for this is I've already planned my vacation for the second Monday, but there is a really good public policy reason for moving it to the fourth Monday. So I'm just wondering, is there any objection to having the August 2023 meeting?
So I'm noticing Mala turning on her microphone, and we would need to bring this back. My question was going to be, or my suggestion is that when we approve the council meeting calendar for next week, we bring that back. I think there was a nodding of bringing it back, but go ahead, Vice Mayor. And we can't vote on it.
We're approving it next week. Yeah, no, I'm not asking for a vote. What I was asking for is, would anyone have an objection to that?
But isn't that the same thing as discussing it?
No, that's not
I'm
actually
channeling my inner Mala here before she could
You were
even get
doing
to
a
the-
wonderful job. I don't even have to speak, Mayor.
You go ahead, because he's not listening. No.
Yes, I think the Vice Mayor has set up the agenda item very nicely, and it
Yes.
sounds like we are bringing back the calendar at a future meeting, and so that can be put in, and the council can vote on it at that time for changing that August meeting date.
Yeah, and we can do that soon as we're doing our calendar. Vice Mayor Anduri?
I would just point out that the August meeting date isn't set. So what you may get back is a calendar that has the date on the 28th.
And we can discuss it at that time.
Yes.
I believe the city clerk is listening in here as well.
Yes,
to
I think she's in agreement.
our consensus building items. Okay, so anything else before we cross any lines? Vice Mayor Anduri, do you?
Oh,
have
no,
anything
that was
else?
it.
Okay, Councilmember Kwok, I saw you take your.
Yes, so
your
I have
mic.
an item to bring up, and that is that back on September 7th through 9th at the Cal Cities Annual Conference, the mayor actually attended a session and shared with me the presentation of the city of El Cerrito, who they had done a case study on how they are building out their below market housing, and how they had identified potential partners who got involved to make that happen. I'm always just curious from a business point of view, how you make the math work out on low income housing, and very keen on seeing how other cities may be doing it. And since it turns out that one of our very own planning department alumni, Sarah Allen, is now working at Eden Housing, which was one of the established developers of below market housing and involved in seeing how other cities did it. We had asked, the mayor and I had asked the city manager, Srivatsa, to approach Eden Housing to see if they'd be willing to give us a presentation and just share some best practice, or how is it working? How do they put deals together? And they are actually willing to do so. So I wanted to just let the council know that this idea to have a meeting with Eden and to ask maybe that 2 council members, that would be the mayor, plus one other person who might be interested, who would like to attend that meeting. And so that the city manager could then go forward and schedule that. So if there's anybody here interested in attending a meeting with Eden Housing on best practice in low income.
Sounds like we should bring it all, potentially. We did talk about this, and I see nodding of heads. And so I think what we will do is with Councilmember Kwok's concurrence, that we look at bringing that back, and potentially city manager and staff could meet and then bring that back at a future time for a presentation.
For the whole council. Okay, sure. I'm fine with that.
Yeah. And I know we're all very interested, and thank you very much. It was a very good session. And then Councilmember Kwok, I know, did speak with El Cerrito about other things that they have going on there as well. So it'll be a good discussion. Okay, any other items, Councilmember Kwok? Any other things you want to share? Okay, Councilmember Kendall.
Yeah, talking about the league, I was also down there too, had some great meetings, learned a lot. But one of the things that I was involved with was trying to get a resolution passed by the members. And I know we all got a bunch of emails about it, to support the constitutional amendment on a future ballot, to support local land use and zoning. And was part of getting the almost 100 signatures within just a couple of hours at the beginning of the meeting. Then it went to the rules committee and they didn't recommend it. But what I want to tell people at the end was when the vote happened with the General Assembly, what happened was really odd. And I've gotten a lot of feedback from a lot of folks. Instead of having a discussion of the item, instead the league flipped the format and said, hey, we're going to have a vote on whether we even have a discussion at all. And there was a lot of confusion. There was other motions put forward that were denied. That vote went through. People had no idea what they were voting on, and then no discussion at all. And it was very, we can't conduct our meetings like that, right? You know, we don't get to choose to not have a vote whether we discuss things or not, because of course we discuss things because that's a public entity. And so it was a surprise and disappointing move by the league. And I know that there are a lot of cities not wanting to join the league again and looking at other, there's contract cities, there's independent cities, there's a whole bunch of other league of cities that a lot of cities are thinking about joining based on this kind of conduct. And so I doubt that would happen. And I admit that would be probably a big haul for our city here, because I know we have people that are very involved with the league. But I just wanted to express my disappointment in the conduct of how they held their meeting, which is very unusual and not very above board. Anyways, that was one thing I wanted to report on. I did also go to that DEIB meeting at Stanley Middle School, and it was on gender identity, and it was a super interesting talk. It was directed towards parents. And so, but the concept of doing this more community-wide, not just for parents of school kids, but doing it community-wide, is something that I've brought back to our DIB group. And we're going to do the next really nice public forum with renters in Lafayette, which is another amazing topic to get their feedback. But hopefully the whole gender identity concept, and this group that did it was presented by Gender Spectrum, and their presentation was really well informed and fact-based, and just a really nice thing. And I hope we can have that happen in our city. A couple of the things that came up through public comments today is the whole animal control issue, the wildlife issue we have. I hope we bring that back somehow. In terms of possibilities of what the city, as a city council, we could pursue as options for our city. I think that would be some very interesting. The objective standards right now that Elliot Hudson has brought up, I've been hearing it could be very almost simple, and I don't know if I'm going to cross any boundaries, but basically we have a checklist and points, and we might just want to review those checklists and points. We don't have to take the deep dive maybe, but I've heard feedback that we may want to really look into revising how we score things. And that would be a much simpler process than developing a whole objective guidelines broadly. And so I hope that we could consider bringing back at least discussing the point system. Councilmember Dawson.
Thanks. Thanks, Councilmember Cantondale. Greg, when you were there, I just want to ask if I can. I thought we were working on objective standards for downtown. Is that? Isn't that? I don't know.
Greg,
where are we at?
We just got Greg.
Or are we not?
And yeah, and Greg can answer questions.
Oh, great! Thank you.
Greg, I think you're muted. I mean, you are muted, so I don't know if you're speaking. Still muted.
Mayor, he's coming in as a panelist. If you'll just give a moment for Zoom to do its internet magic.
Oh, okay. I just thought he had been here for long enough for that. Okay. Welcome back. Thank you.
Thank you. I am still in the meeting, although I was attending to a small matter, so I didn't hear the question, but I'm happy to entertain it now.
So the question has to do with objective standards, but Council, so.
Yeah, just a quick question. It was just I think we did the multifamily objective standards.
Correct.
Right. So
And I
that's
was pausing to not cross, but anyway, go ahead.
no, I
Greg.
just wanted to I guess confirm that we have those. That was 2019, 2020
Earlier.
So
We do
Okay.
have phase one objective standards.
Yeah.
I'm happy to circulate them to the council. I think at that time, the Planning Commission Council envisioned revisiting that and establishing perhaps more refined phase two.
That's it.
That has not happened yet.
Okay. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Okay, thanks.
okay, any other question for Greg or any additional items?
Could we bring back, would it be simpler to bring back just the points rather than opening up a whole process like the objective standards one? Could we bring back the checklist and the points? And so we just change the points. We don't change would that be an easier task on staff? So we could bring it back sooner.
So take the existing work that has been done and refine the point values that can be achieved by any one move. That would be simpler than opening up and doing, developing new or additional objective standards. And I think that those being in place, particularly hopefully before January 1, 2018, we don't run afoul of SB 330, and it's just a point allocation system rather than a refinement, rather than developing new objective standards. So yes, we can do that. When requests come in from either the public or something like this, we can add it to our list of items to prioritize in the next work plan, or if the council directs that this is kind of a time-sensitive issue that we should reallocate resources to, we can do that as well. It just means that something else is going to have to give in the meantime.
Correct.
So that discussion of whether
Thank you,
that should
Mara.
happen would be on a future agenda, which is what I think Councilmember Kendall was maybe asking for.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah,
So any
thank
other
you.
items, Councilmember Kendall?
Yeah, well, sorry. We at Art and Wine, we had one of our wonderful, actually our transfer commissioner, Stella Weatherspoon, come up and mention how this is for employee retention of city staff, how it used to be that our city staffers would have the right to come to Lafayette, to have their children come to Lafayette schools. And that went away for a while, and we were hoping to bring it back. And so I know we talked about that, and I don't know if that is something that we can consider, we can still push on.
So, and I was also standing there when that happened, and
Right.
City Manager Savatsa, I know, has this on her list, and so could potentially, I don't know how much I can say, but I will note that it didn't take out, it used to be that people employed in the city of Lafayette under something called the Allen Bill could actually send their children to local schools. It wasn't just Lafayette. And when that was changed by the school board and the Allen Bill rules were changed, there was discussion about could it be city and school employees. So it was never the city employees were never pulled out of that. But City Manager Sabatza has that to following up from the Art and Wine to speak with the superintendent about.
Thank you.
So
that's it
for bringing that up. And then does anybody else have anything? I had a couple of things, and then I'm going to look at Mala. At the meeting that Council Member Candell that you missed, I did give a report on the League of California Cities, and I think that if you go back and watch, I think I did talk about the parliamentary procedure that was followed at that meeting, and so I would encourage you, because I don't believe I can engage in sort of a back and forth on that, but I did report out on that. What I would like to share, and I thought about doing this earlier on the EIR, but I wanted to publicly clarify why we canceled the October 4th meeting. And remember, that was the meeting where we had decided to continue several items, including the EIR, because of the time constraints on the previous meeting, the September 26th meeting. We were informed prior to the meeting by a resident that October 4th was Yom Kippur. We had also on our September 26th meeting not changed our meeting, and it was Rosh Hashanah. And so I made a decision to cancel our October 4th meeting, not because of the item on the agenda, but in respect and deference to our residents who observe those holidays. And in speaking with the city manager, we do try to check those dates for conflicts, with different occurrences, and we will strive to be better and check those. I know we were doing that one meeting on the fly, and I just wanted to let the public know that that's why we did that. Then I also on the animal services, continuing that discussion and bringing that back. Thank you, Councilmember Candell. I was also supportive of that and gathering that information, and we'll work with staff on that. Sort of the happy parts of being the mayor, everything is great. And as I told a fourth grader who asked me this the other day, do you love being mayor? And I said, yes, I love being mayor. And one of those opportunities that makes me love it even more and will be a memory was getting invited to present to the fourth and fifth graders, all 180 or so of them, at an assembly, their first assembly since before times, as I call it, at the end of their advocacy week. And so they invited the mayor to come and speak about our local government structure and governance structure, and the council and the mayor and our priorities. And I basically started off in trying to explain to them, kind of the things we oversee, what were the things that they thought were important that a city needed to have. And it was great. Yeah, great discussion. I have so much confidence in the future just based on these students and their enthusiasm. But one thing, I could go on and on because the questions were fabulous. One student asked if I love being mayor, and another one very thoughtfully asked if it was stressful. And I said, yes, both of those things can be true. The one thing that I did want to share anecdotally is that ahead of it, I had learned that they had just had their city council elections. And then their elected leaders conducted a vote, a poll, if you will, to determine what the theme of their Spirit Day would be. And they had three choices. And the big thing about it was that they had practically 100% voter turnout. And so before I went, I looked up, and when Councilmember Candell and I were elected in 2018, the turnout was 79.27% or something like that. which is also very high, as we know, Lafayette voters turn out. But I did point out those two, and we did a little guessing range game and just encourage them to keep voting, that's how we make a difference, voting in our school elections at the 4th and 5th grade level, and encouraging their parents and neighbors and grandparents and others to continue voting and to keep voting once they turned 18. So it was very fun. And as I just said, it'll be one of my favorite memories. It was just very, very fun. And I want to thank Joanne Robbins for helping. We gave them the little pins for the students going forward. The other thing that I got to do that was fun, and I know several of us were there, was to recognize Jay Lifson. And so we did provide a proclamation. We also, Narup helped to facilitate getting his new copies, printed out proclamations of his Business Person of the Year, and I believe citizen, but definitely Business Person of the Year, that were burned when the chamber offices were caught on fire. And so we replaced those for him as well. And Jay will be officially stepping down, turning over the reins on October 28th, leaving it in very capable hands of Sarah Regan, who will be the executive director, Holly, Jenny, Linda, and AJ, who will be steering the ship. And as I noted, I'm very glad that Jay will still be volunteering, just stepping down as that role. So he will not be leaving us completely. And then I think those were the big items. Yeah, I can hold that for the next meeting. So we did get a couple of items and that we will look at bringing back on future agendas. So if there's no other, Councilmember Dawson.
Just following up on your last comment about Jay, Vice Mayor Andori and I and Thomas Myers had lunch yesterday with Jay and Sarah, just so we, just to say thank you and also transition into welcoming Sarah into our new, going forward with the chamber, great relationship that we will continue.
As the chamber liaisons.
Yes, exactly. As chamber liaisons.
Yes.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then, yeah, I'm not going to say, I hope there's not a video, but now we'll move on to not of your meeting, of the comments of the mayor at Jay's event. So now we will move on to 9B. The city manager isn't here. Tracy, I don't know if she provided you with any update to provide.
She did not.
Okay,
so
thank you. And then we'll move on to agenda item C, 9C, and I'm going to ask Vice Mayor Andori to bring this item forward.
Okay, well, it's all in the very brief staff report. This is a significant anniversary. We're not proposing that we do it up in a big way like we have in the past because we have so many other things on our plate, but I don't think it's one we could ignore. Every time we have a chance to celebrate our history and remind people of things, I think we should take advantage of it. So what we'd like to do tonight is get your thoughts. We provided some ideas of what we could do, get your feedback on that, but what we really need is approval of the $20,000 budget so we can move forward immediately, particularly with the utility boxes, which need to be redone in any event. So any thoughts about what else we might do?
Any questions? Councilmember Dawson?
I was going to compliment you. I think it's great in terms of what you're trying to do. Do as much as you can, but keep it on the low resource side. So I think it's a great idea. The ideas you've already posited.
Great. Councilmember Kwok, you also have your hand up?
I also really appreciate reading the list, and particularly I'm personally interested in hearing the Lafayette Historical Society. There's such a fine group they do so much work for us, and just shining the spotlight on them and letting them bathe in it and just giving them a lot of the microphone and helping to amplify and attract a lot of the new residents who are moving in to learn our history, right? So I think it's a great reason to tap into our history. And we've got some really excellent resources. And I'm looking forward to learning more about our history. So I just would like try to amplify that aspect of it and really do everything we can to engage the public on our history.
Great. And Councilmember Kendall, I see nodding. And then I will say that Dennis from Town Hall Theater did send an email that if, we're moving forward in that direction, Town Hall Theater, would love to be involved as well. I'm sure other partners and stakeholders would probably like to be able to be involved where appropriate. So with that, I will go to public comment and ask Suzanne. We're dwindling in public comment, but
thank you, Mayor. If anyone would like to comment at this time, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom. Mayor, I do not see any hands raised.
And neither do I. So do I have a motion, Vice Mayor Anduri?
I move approval of an increase of $20,000 to City Council Budget 011-110-861.
Great. And Council Member, both hands went up. So we'll do Council Member Dawson. So we have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri and a second by Council Member Dawson. And we will conduct a roll call vote. Council Member Kendall?
Aye.
Council Member Dawson?
Aye.
Council Member Kwok?
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Anduri?
Aye.
And I'm an aye. And that motion passes unanimously. And thank you to Vice Mayor Anduri for getting the ball rolling and for drafting and working with city staff to bring forward a staff report and recommendation.
Yeah, and thank you for staff. This will be a staff effort going forward, and the ideas here are from staff, so much appreciated.
Yeah. Okay, so now we will move on to the last item under 9, which is 9D, and I will turn it back to Vice Mayor Anduri.
Okay, thank you. Well, we've all received quite a number of communications on this very important topic. I'm not suggesting we discuss it tonight. I will say I am very much in favor of moving forward with this. Similar to the situation we had where we had an item that we referred to Environmental Task Force, because I think our practice should be referring it to the City Commission that deals with a matter. What I would suggest, and it's part of the recommendation, is that we refer this to the Crime Prevention Commission for analysis of the pros and cons of adopting a safe gun storage ordinance modeled on the Walnut Creek ordinance, because that's what the group thinks is the most up-to-date ordinance, to be given to the council in time for the November 28th council meeting. So that's the proposal, that's the guidance that I'd like to have. I don't know if we need a motion or if we can just get a concurrence in that recommendation.
We need a motion.
Oh, so moved.
A second.
Okay. Councilmember Kendall. So is there any other discussion before I call for the vote? Councilmember Kwok.
Mayor, I didn't know if you had taken public comment.
Oh, I need public comment. Thank you. But so did you have a question, Councilmember Kwok?
Does it leave enough time for the Crime Prevention Commission to opine on it, study it, and so forth?
They've already discussed it once.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so we will go to public comment on the item 9D, the safe storage ordinance. Council is sending that to, to the Crime Prevention Commission.
If any members of the public would like to speak on this item, please use the raise hand feature in Zoom now. Mayor, I do not see any hands raised.
Thank you, Suzanne. So now we do have a motion by Vice Mayor Anduri and a second by Councilmember Kendall. Before I go to the roll call vote, are there any questions, comments? Vice Mayor Anduri.
I just want to state the motion one more time because the wording is important. And
Yes.
so I move that we refer this matter to the Crime Prevention Commission for an analysis of the pros and cons of adopting a safe gun storage ordinance modeled on the Walnut Creek ordinance to be given to the council in time for the November 28th council meeting.
A second.
I was going to say, Councilmember Candela, are you still okay with that? Okay, if there are no additional comments or discussion items, I will conduct the roll call vote. Councilmember Candel?
Aye.
Councilmember Dawson?
Aye.
Councilmember Kwok?
Aye.
And Vice Mayor Anduri?
Aye.
And I am an aye, so we have unanimously approved that. And with that, we have no written communications other than the public comments that were included in our packet. So if there is no further points of order, we will adjourn the meeting at 9:34. So everyone have a lovely evening and beyond. Thanks.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.